Uh, in a second, I wanted to introduce our amazing guests we have here. But first, I just also wanted to share a couple things about the arts, culture, tourism sector in RISE and just some good grounding for that. One, it's worth noting that according to the governor's economic blueprint that was released earlier this year, we're really three sectors wearing a trench coat, and that's specifically creative economy, outdoor recreation, and tourism. Those are all three distinct sectors that the governor's economic blueprint identifies, but they all fall under the RISE umbrella of arts, culture, and tourism. And so just some like really quick little facts here, and this is just some stuff to throw out here because I mean obviously like our two amazing speakers are going to have more to say about some of the stuff specifically, but I just want to note that the some of the things that we see from places like the Otis report shows that the creative economy supports over 800,000 jobs statewide. Of course, we also know that data for rural areas is often really lacking because a lot of those jobs end up getting concentrated in regions like LA or the Bay Area, but they're also incredibly important here in rural areas. I mean, I would argue often just more important, often in many cases, for quality of life. And quality of life is a big reason for why people move to places and decide to live and stay in places. Um, we actually had Derek from California Jobs First speaking at the Californians for the Arts conference a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about precisely that, right? People decide to live and then also work in places that they like being, and the creative economy is a huge part of that that isn't always expressed. Some quick facts about tourism specifically as a sector. From Visit California, they just actually dropped their report. Josh, I know you looked at that report as well. $157 billion in 2024, 3% growth from 2023, employs over 1.2 million people in the state, and also generates 12.6 billion in state and local tax revenue. That's a big deal. And then of course to give a sort of a sense of like how that kind of starts to look at a local level, particularly with outdoor recreation being such a big deal in this region. There was a report that Redwood National Park dropped a little while ago showing that they had 400,000 visitors in 2023, creating a cumulative economic benefit of $38 million to our region and supporting 384 local jobs. And so that's just like a little fraction of the piece here locally of outdoor recreation. And I just have to get it out of the way here. I'm just gonna share some bad news for our sector because it's not been a great 100 days for us, as I imagine it has been for pretty much no one. But just to get it out of the way, film and TV production dropped to 22% in the first quarter of this year. I mean, that's just the result of a lot of other places internationally as well as nationally offering better incentives, and we're seeing a brain drain and an escape out of the LA area. In the works right now, Newsom is proposing a doubling of the tax credit from 330 to $750 million. Obviously, that'd have a big deal for LA, but that is also important because, there was if we think about that latest Leonardo DiCaprio film that is now releasing, right? Like I can look at the trailers and be like, oh yeah, I recognize that supermarket. So there's a very strong Humboldt to LA connection in particular that could only grow in the future if the film industry manages to keep going. And of course, I'm sure you could have a lot more to say about this sort of stuff. So the NEA, National Endowment for the Arts, fun facts about the NEA recently, like not only as of a couple months ago, I was warning people to reconsider even applying to the NEA because of their anti-DEI new regulations that they're putting in place that could potentially trap a lot of organizations. But as of like I think just a couple days ago, they're now just talking about shuttering the NEA entirely. So
Yeah, it's a
if,
moot point.
yeah, exactly. So I'm like, yeah, guess what? You won't even be able to apply at all. So that means that the only arts and culture nonprofit funding will be coming from the state of California. Federal funding is pretty much just going to be zeroed out at this point. Uh, so about that, and you can definitely talk more about this too. Currently, California ranks 35th in the nation for per capita arts funding. To put that in perspective, I
It's
mean,
bad.
I'll say this too, like to put that in because the California Arts Council has a current budget of $21 million. To put that in perspective, I like comparing it to most recently, I was just in Ireland for a week or so. It was very nice, and I may never I may go back and never leave. But so California has a population of 40 million people and spends $20 million on the arts annually. All right, so let's do that math-wise. Ireland has a population of 5.3 million and spends 158 million on the arts annually. So we can really see that even in the most progressive, what we like to think of ourselves as the most progressive state in the nation, like there is an alignment, there is a political alignment around funding choices and whatnot that ultimately does drive economic development in the sector as well and has to be considered. So just gonna throw that out there. Speaking of outdoor recreation, under the new administration, we're definitely looking at potential sell-offs of federally owned land, of which in our region, I did the math back when this was beginning to look like an issue. I mean, of our four-county region, approximately 25% of our land is federally owned. So what will continue to happen with that land is going to be interesting. And then finally, Visit California anticipates a 1% shrinkage of the tourism industry this year, with a 9.2% decrease in international travel, what they are calling affectionately the Trump slump, because basically no one wants to come to the United States anymore, for some strange reason. So, yeah. Cool. So I'm just gonna get out that stuff out of the way first. Like I said, because there is the reality that like there are a lot of strong headwinds facing the sector right now. There's just no way to sugarcoat that. Like we have issues to deal with. And that having been said, I mean I think that there is a lot of amazing potential. And I mean, I think that we can make some really amazing things happen if we are able to still use the resources we have at hand. So real quick, I wanted to do some quick introductions here of our two guest speakers. And then, like I said, unfortunately, Sarah West from Visit Eureka is not going to be able to be here today. So I'm going to just try and fill in a little bit on the Visit California reports that have dropped over the last month or so that might be able to give some ideas about where the state's going tourism-wise, as well as what kind of resources Visit California identifies out there that might be useful funding-wise. But first, I wanted to introduce Sal Moreno, Executive Director of the Redwood Parks Conservancy, always exercising during meetings, which I find really inspiring. I'm like, oh man, I gotta make that happen. He has an amazing, really incredibly long career in nonprofit and fundraising, which is, how he landed at the Redwood Parks Conservancy currently, and also lives in Crescent City. And we're really lucky to have him here. And then also Ann Bon Crawford, or ABC, as known to her students. Yeah, she has a 40-plus career in arts education, founder of the Arcadia Arts Institute, which I was actually just teaching a class at like half an hour ago.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and also, I mean, more importantly, has served as the executive director of the California Arts Council from 2018 to 2021. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, about almost 6 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also most recently involved with the Art and State Parks program and just a whole bunch of other stuff. So we're really lucky to have her here today and sharing what she has with us. All right. Um, with that, I'm just going to take a couple minutes to just try and cover some tourism stuff here. And to really kind of cover everything I will talk about, I'm just going to drop a link here in the chat to Nope, that is not the link. That is that's not the link. Let's not. I was
Are
like,
we going to get your grocery list?
right. I was like, nope, that's not going to be useful at all. So, uh, back in the last couple of years, Visit California, which is a statewide NGO nonprofit organization that concentrates on tourism in California. They received a significant amount of ARPA funding during COVID to create some regional strategic plans that were not only going to look at tourism for the whole state, but also focus in on specific regions. Now, one of the cool things that happened, coincidentally, is that their North Coast region that they identified happens to perfectly overlap with the four counties in the Redwood Region RRRISE, which makes up Del Norte, Humboldt County, Mendocino, Lake County. So like that did not happen throughout the whole rest of the state. So it was an interesting, funny coincidence, the way that worked out. But it does mean that there is a particularly cool opportunity for directly translating their recommendations, the things that they're thinking about into RRRISE activity. And so, I mean, I dropped the link there in the chat. Again, I would suggest anyone, you know, you could just go read this and then you wouldn't even have to, you could tune me out for the next 5 minutes. But they identify a lot of really important things. And I want to go over like some of the really key points that they identified. And if I were going to sum it up entirely, they stated that essentially the region that we're looking at, the Redwood region, the North Coast region, as they call it, has a tremendous potential in this intersection between amazing natural beauty, right? The redwoods, the oceans, the mountains, all of this amazing opportunity for outdoor recreation, and an incredibly vibrant cultural scene, coupled with small town, just kind of like small town life as well. They're like, okay, there's an amazing draw here. And the things that are currently holding us back, however, is that essentially our tourism infrastructure is highly underdeveloped. And that, I mean, that includes things, I mean, like we are lucky enough to have things like the Arcata airport. The biggest thing the thing that they mentioned though was transportation. Transportation is an incredibly difficult. I mean, we basically have only a couple of roads that go into and out of the region. If any of those roads go out, which I mean, Sal, you know this. I mean, I used to be living up in Crescent City, be like, oh, hey, like, can I get to Crescent City today? Right? Like, how's that gonna go? So like our transportation infrastructure is tremendously vulnerable and lacking. They also identify that just in general, things like a lack of luxury hotels, a lack of convention centers, or things that could draw significant business travel. Because I mean that's a huge component of like the whole travel ecosystem. So that, I mean, so they're like, okay, hey, there's a lot of potential here, but it will need a lot of investment as well to reach its full capacity. And to that end, they also identified a few particular key points that they recommended for how how the sector could be developed here. And number one, they said invest in tourism product development, right? It's kind of what we were just talking about, right? They said like, okay, understand that there are certain like, you have a lot of things to offer here. Outdoor recreation being, the lead, but also with a very, very strong cultural component. Really, really package that. I mean, we also like one of the things I noticed as I was doing more research into this is that a lot of we don't have a lot of strength in the statewide tour in the tour operators, right? Folks who like will catch people out of San Francisco or LA, and they'll be like, we have a 10-day all-inclusive tour planned for you that's going to go usually through places like Eastern Sierra or whatnot if they're going to do the outdoor recreation pathway. We do not have as many tours that are heading up northwards. And so this is one of the things they talk about, an example of like how to create whole destination packages essentially around the product development here in the region. So they suggest like, okay, and also how to get stakeholders, that obviously include people in the hotelier industry, people running various tourism related businesses, how to get them together and thinking about in that term of how do we develop essentially our product here at a statewide level. They call out cannabis tourism, of course, which I mean certainly has had its share of challenges as well. The wineries and vineyards, cultural activities, as noted. They particularly, I mean, shout out to the Eureka Cultural Arts District here for myself locally. A lot of great stuff happening there. Number two, they really call out again the need to improve tourism-related transportation infrastructure, particularly since it means that there's a very limited. It very much limits the it limits the markets that we can often appeal to because, for example, like and I know this because it's from the data that Sarah's been able to provide me from the city of Eureka. A very large number of our international travelers are from places like Germany or Norway, for example, because they really love outdoor recreation activities. They're what we call long haulers. They're willing to take long trips out into the wilderness or whatnot. There's a lot of tourists that would much rather just step off a plane, get on a shuttle to a nice, to a nice luxury resort and just hang out there and have some curated activities that they're taking part in. That's something where we're having a much harder time capturing those markets, right? So trying to find out ways of like, okay, how can infrastructure be built up in a way that creates those kind of opportunities. Number three, supporting workforce development. And I mean, this ties in, of course, with a lot of things that RRRISE has also identified as sort of what in the economic blueprint are called anchor issues: housing, healthcare. There's a lot of there's a lot of things that need to be developed there. I do think that it's also one of those things that, in terms of developing the sector, there's also this ongoing perception that jobs created in the tourism industry are bad jobs. And while there's certainly some truth to that, I mean, there's also reality. I mean, I know stories of like, Cindy Vosberg up in Crescent City telling me like, hey, like I know servers who are working down at the local brewery who are making $60,000 a year, once you count in all their tips and everything like that. So it is definitely possible. And I think that this is one of the things that Visit California, as well as other places internationally, have started to encourage, which is identifying employers who are engaging in sustainable workforce development with their own employee base, right? And lifting up those examples. Because if we're able to direct our economic development resources towards employers or towards segments of the industry that really are putting the work in to making sure that they're treating their employees right, we're lifting that middle there. That's how we can really make sure that we are encouraging that kind of responsible growth. And then finally, enhancing regional marketing and messaging. I mean, this is a big thing too. That I mean, like we don't really have currently a very coherent regional brand or regional marketing message. And I mean, there's a huge potential to incorporate that, particularly as we see these new reports come out of Visit California, and to think about how we see development happen in the sector. And to think about those sorts of questions is very important because, particularly in the tourism sector, there are some grants certainly available, and you can look through, and there's a number of really great resources already noted by Visit California here in their reports. But by and large, overall, this is about small business development. This is really about the work being done, local SBDCs, working with small business owners, often small business owners, sole proprietors. I mean, sole proprietors are incredibly common in the tourism industry. or again, people like, working in the service industries as well, like, restaurant owners, food truck owners, all of these folks, event promoters, all of these folks essentially, I mean, what what is going to be most useful and impactful is good small business support that recognizes also what will most strongly benefit them, which is market expansion. And market expansion in this case means also addressing, like, these key shortcomings, whether it's transportation or lack of other infrastructure, or recognizing those opportunities, such as enhancing our regional marketing, right? Because again, if the more that the more that the people are flowing into the area, right? We are just again growing that market for small business owners, right? That's workforce development in our sector, which is important too, particularly since, I mean, I think while things are dire nationally and statewide, I think it is important. I mean, I like to recognize that it's still possible, I firmly believe, that for individual regions, particularly say ours, with a lot of potential to still do well for ourselves, even in challenging circumstances, because if we are able to distinguish ourselves in particular ways that involve things like, hey, like doing what we can to address these infrastructure shortcomings, but it feels to me certainly like a good time to take that number 4 point that that Visit California puts out there and say, hey, a very strong regional marketing message can have a lot of impact, because then you're starting to see again, market growth. There's still, you're right, there's still potential for market growth, even in an overall pretty dire market. And yeah, I want to make sure we leave plenty of time for other speakers, so I'm just going to wrap it there. And if there are no questions about that, I would say, yeah, just read those plans when you have a spare moment. They're pretty interesting. And I didn't say who necessarily was going to go first, Sal or Ann. So I guess, I mean, I don't know, you can flip a coin at this point or whatever you would like to do.
I'm happy if Anne wants to go first. I'm happy to let her go first.
A gentleman, thank you. So I've put a bunch of links in the chat because I don't have a slide deck, which is like, you can thank me later. You don't have to sit through a slide deck. Not that I don't have them, I'll tell you. So thanks, Calder, for your introduction. Yeah, I spent quite a while in as a teacher, and actually there's so many points that Calder was talking about: workforce development and economic development. Almost everything that he talked about, I tried to bring into my the educational context that I taught in. In fact, he just got done teaching in the Arcata Arts Institute, which is a school to career program. And it is workforce development. There's also an innovation design program at Arcata High that it talks about product design and development. And I managed to save the wood shop, the metal shop, but added technological tools to it. So instead of doing what a lot of schools did, just like make classrooms with really high ceilings, we kept these other VOTEC classes intact and just brought them up to industry standards. Anyway, so I've done that. Have been involved in statewide and national creative education advocacy for a long time, to the point where Governor Brown appointed me to be executive director of CAC because he had a strong creative education focus. And he had a council that he thought maybe my excellent classroom discipline skills would come in handy managing the council, which was more or less a board. Can't say as I ever did that really, really well. I don't know if anyone ever does when it comes to boards, but and then was reappointed by Governor Newsom, started the California Creative Corps. I put one of the links there is for the Upstate Creative Corps, which you're probably familiar with, and that is now being used as a template for the governor's creative economy work group. As you know, if we're gonna like really try and beef up the creative economy, whoa, look, we have a template already. And it's like a baby WPA, which is how I built the model. Because that had great success and that did really nourish the arts and culture sector and brought it into an interdisciplinary forum where people understood that the arts support other fields and other fields can support the arts. And to that end, I stepped out of politics, have my health intact. So I'm calling it a win. But am still Parks and Rec asked me to please come and remain the senior leadership consultant for the arts in California parks, which Saul, are you part of that as a co-op right now? I'm not sure. I don't think so. But
No, we're the cooperating association.
yes, you're a co-op. But we should talk offline because you can be part of it.
Okay.
Because co-ops are such a strong backbone for the parks. They always have been. They continue to be even more important. So we'll talk. But arts and parks is state parks and local parks. And as happened to many, many state agencies last budget season, um, funding that was not sustained funding was axed. So the funding was cut in half for this. Despite that, we continued to put out grants, robust grants, and are building the infrastructure for state park staff and artists through the cooperation of California Arts Council to keep the program going. And I gotta say, and Saul knows this better than anybody, there are park staff members that are passionate as the day is long, and they're like, okay, we'll just figure out how to do the work anyway, maybe bring it under another umbrella or whatever. And they're great. It's one of the most refreshing agencies I've ever worked with, because they're honest and truthful, and everyone just wants to work hard. Wow, okay, let's do it. And they love the arts as well as loving the landscape. Yeah. So we're doing that is staying very lively. And there are two tools that we've built that I really wanted to build, and Parks Like got it done. And one is a statewide directory of artists. So if you know of any artists that want to be involved in civic artwork or do art with the land on public land, whether it's a city park, a county park, a state park, or whatever, they want to be involved, they should get on that directory, because that's where park staff goes to look, and that's where co-op staff goes to look. If they have a great idea and they want to bring some artists into the mix, they look at that directory. And it's any artist who wants to be involved, that's involved in any kind of art. They
Is
can
that one
sign up
on
for it.
in your links here?
Yes, it is. If you go to the Arts in California Parks,
Okay, great.
there is last time I looked on the front page, there's a link to that artist directory. And
Right.
very soon we're going to launch a venue map for all of the state parks, and keep adding as many local parks as we can that lists what facilities they have available. as well as a contact person, and also who the county arts lead is and how to contact them. So it's like a one-stop shop. Oh, I want to do Shakespeare in the Park, but I need to find some actors. There will be contact information there so you can put it together.
Right.
Um, and you know one part of the you can read the mission statement yourself on the it was very carefully crafted on the website, but it creating arts in the parks, you know, fosters community bonds, and it really does promote health and happiness. Sounds simple, maybe sounds a lot of someone at this state of our lives, the state of the state, but I think it's pretty basic. And you know, I've been to a lot of the events, and it really does that. And so there's I keep going back to, I will keep going back to, and I won't talk for a huge amount of time, but the fact that I think at this point in time, if we're talking about economic development in the creative sector, we're talking about interdisciplinary partnerships, because that's the only way this is going to work. I firmly believe that it's got to be interdisciplinary. And I think about that all the way from the public education, school to career zone, which should start at 5th and 6th grade, going all the way up, you know, into professional artists working. Some of the strongest artists that I've ever trained and graduated were brilliant mathematicians and went on to have brilliant engineering careers. But the fact that they were creative helped them really fly. So thinking about how the arts can be involved in an interdisciplinary manner is really important. Oh, Josh, you have your hand up. That's so cute.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
raised my hand to just get
I like it.
in the formal thing. Yeah, I mean, this point I think is a really good one, and with some of the just what you brought up about like the engineering side and all that, you know, there is a resurgence, you know, I would say in sort of the makers world and all of that,
Yeah,
people that can create and make, and you know, that really translates, you know, directly into tech. And I see, you know, I was going to ask you to maybe touch on a little bit more about your work with the quantum AI thing there,
yeah, I will.
but you know, we were just I was on a Greg Foster put together a call with some folks interested in this world of aviation and emerging aviation stuff, and there's um, we were kind of going through like trying to get a sense of where those communities might be of the makers who could then, you know, whether it's aviation or some other, you know, product, maybe as somebody brought up the wing boats and stuff like that.
Right.
So
Wing
that direct
inflatable.
link from the arts and the creativity into, you know, cool products and services. I think, you know, that's another way to think about the economic development, you know, potential and way to
Yeah,
sustain and support, you know. So I think that's a great point. This is all I'm
absolutely.
agreeing with. Yeah.
Thank you. You know, there was a hard nut to crack in the Department of Education at one point because I was lobbying for more CDE funding for creative education, and there was this one gatekeeper I could not get past, and so I took myself down. Someone told me something about him, and I went down and I just popped up into his cube on 16th Street in Sacramento. And I said, "Hey, how you doing?" He said, "Great." I said, "So I see you're such a great, you're a Disney fan and you have like a season pass." And I went, "Yeah, yeah." And I said, "So do you know that Disney employs more artists than any other
Mm,
industry in Southern California right now?" And he went, "What?" I said, "Yeah.
yeah.
The second in line is Las Vegas.
Mm.
Do you like to go to Las Vegas?" I knew he did already. And he goes, "Yeah." I said, everything that you're presented with that makes you go, wow, was created by an artist. How are we going to train them up? let me train him. And we got a program started. He like opened the gate, and but it's true. It's very true. And it's true in an interdisciplinary manner. It doesn't just have to be entertainment. Yeah,
Right.
I work as an artist in residence in Google's quantum AI. They're computing labs, they're research labs. They don't just research, they do it all. They research, they make, they test, they prototype, they start again. It's a very fluid, very innovative, obviously, and I stand behind. I have so many NDAs in front of me right now. So I can't, even the images that I have on my site are small, they don't get big, they don't, you can't see exactly where they're installed. But within science, there's a greater acceptance of the fact that in order to foster innovation, you have to have creative minds. And in order for their minds, whether it's a quantum physicist, a quantum mechanic, I mean, they have different levels of quantumness going on there. They all need to be fairly creative. And they know that if they don't work in an environment that fosters that creativity, and if they don't have discussions and dialogue with people that maybe have a different vocabulary, which is actually the same, but with their artists who come in, then they're not quite as innovative as they could be. And so like Google gets it, and they kind of get it. They don't pay us a lot, but yeah, I have entree to people they poached from the Hadron Collider. I mean, it's just like, it's amazingly high value for me. But there are many different ways to have that happen, and that's artist residencies in, public health, inside of science-based businesses, inside of Wing Inflatable, it really is important to think about it a little differently. There's two of us that mainly work, and then we bring in other artists, many local ones from time to time, into this creative exchange at Google. We work with scientists in a dialogue, and then bring their own creativity out. So at this point in time, I have a team, an artist team of people that when I did a soft opening a couple months ago, they thought, they were showing their colleagues their artwork. It's just, I got such a big kick out of it. And they take that back to their office.
How do you extract that out to the rural areas where, the Google centers are not located? And I think that's always a
I
question that
live in a
comes up.
rural area. I'm right here in Arcata right now. I
Yeah.
go down there. It's Google. So I go down there periodically, not very much.
Uh-huh.
I talk to them. They're quite comfortable working asynchronous with me. I work with people that use atomic force microscopes, and they send me images, and we do a back and forth, digitally.
Hmm.
And I only went down once to show them like mid-project in this last series that I did of where I was going. We had a back and forth, and what if you did this and this? What if you fabricated it this way? Which of course I said, sure I can. And then I came back to Arcata and wondered, okay, how am I going to do that? And I just drew on the expertise of my friends to figure it out. But and then drove them all down. I mean, the world is different now. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter where the artist is, really. Unless they're going to have an experiential event in a park, then they have to be there. But they can very easily fabricate something or put a whole body of work together and then just go hang it somewhere or place it somewhere, provided they have all the right CEQA certification. I've learned a lot about what it takes to actually put something on public land. There's a really good book about this. I think I put the link in that Penguin book. someone that I brought into the mix with Arts and Parks right after she published the book is Ivy Ross, and the book is called Your Brain on Art, and she wrote it with Susan Magnuson, who's a she's a neurologist, but she neuroscientist, and she specializes in neuroaesthetics. And it's an amazing book, and it has all the right language to make this much better than mine, to make this interdisciplinary pitch of why it's so important. And she talks about how, art and creativity can humanize the workplace, and that helps teams work better together. It changes the brain and the way we think, literally, and there's science-based data in her book to back that up, so that problems, challenges, whether they're civic challenges, health challenges, private sector challenges, the brain thinks differently about it, and that's where innovation happens. It the art can regulate your nervous system. It can help people feel safe and engaged, the whole thing. It's just not fluff. There have been policy shifts where things have happened that I think we should take more advantage of. The cultural districts that are happening, it was an unfunded mandate when I first came on board with CAC, and we got it funded. So cultural districts are now funded, and if we get out from underneath this cloud of folks having a scarcity mindset, maybe when there isn't any need for it, maybe there is, but people are just all afraid. Once that lightens up a little bit, then the language is there to enlarge the cultural districts. And the last time Mike came through, McGuire, he was at a farm, and I said, why? We're standing on a 5-generation worked farm right now here in Ferndale. The one over there is 6 generations. That's a culture. That's an ag culture. Why aren't there agricultural districts? Let's like break open that, what a cultural district is. It can be under natural resources. It can be any number of things. In our area in particular, it's agriculture as well as the arts, and that's producing arts and then demonstrating, the arts and culture. So that's already in place. That policy is already in place for cultural districts. California Creative Core is already in place, and it was built to go out into its different regions. We're in the upstate region, and then become sustainable. And the upstate folks, that's the link that I put in there. They're like rock solid. I'm so proud of them. I mean, I worked in Sacramento for years where people thought they were the top part of the state. Like, well, we're Northern California. Like, so pretty sure you're not. Yeah. There's a whole another part of the state up there. And that whole other part of the state rocked it with the creative core. Well, that structure is in place, and it's being touted as a creative economy template by the governor. So, folks could look at it and just really rock it. And
I'm gonna get this book.
the book is amazing. The audio book is just as good. Ivy reads
Okay.
it, or maybe Susan reads it. It doesn't matter. It's just really good. I read it. I listened to it first, and I went back to the book, and I found all the things that just like made me go, oh my God,
Yeah.
it's data backed. It's like science is my favorite part of the trivia game. That's why everyone shouts science when it comes on. Yeah. So There's a whole much more. There are many other things I could say, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to say that I really still firmly believe that there should be robust workforce development in the arts, and it should be married in an interdisciplinary manner throughout our community as much as possible. The school to career education is vital and needs to include the arts as much as possible, especially from here. I know people say it's urban legend that Libby Maynard said there are more artists per capita than in this county than any other county in the United States, but that's actually data. So, Libby had a great habit of laughing at herself. But she did not totally make that up. So we're still right for that. And we are still we are a destination even more than we used to be because people are fleeing the cities. And they're fleeing the cloud that's on top of everybody right now. And they just want to be in the landscape and they want to be happier. And we can bring that. Okay, I'm done. I think it's Saul's time. Thanks for. There's a bunch of other stuff I was going to say in the links. The last two, um, I I gave you something that looks like just an agenda for a meeting. It's not. There's a report in there it's from the Creative Economy Work Group, and it's full of charts. You like charts? It's got charts, bar graphs, but the information is really, really key. And so that's why I put that in. It was just published a couple months ago. And then the latest Otis report is in there too. And that's pretty good. It's a little SoCal centric, but not entirely. Yeah. It could be a little have a little more to do with us and with the rurals, but it's really not bad. And the thing about the NEA, Calder, it's true. I have friends that have left the NEA as recently as this week that I've worked with for years, and it breaks my heart because their hearts are broken. So, we've just got to do it ourselves. And I'm pretty sure we can. So anyway, thanks for listening.
Do I go, Keller? Great presentation, man.
Yeah, go ahead, Sal, take it away, and then we can have some time for questions too.
Well, thank you, Calder, for the invitation. I think I totally misunderstood what we were going to talk about. So I saw that you guys are making a very general, global presentation. And I went totally the opposite way, where, I'm very nuts and bolts presentation. But I'll present it. Let's see if it helps in any way. And then you can stop me at any time if you wanna ask any questions or that kind of thing. Let me see. I think one of the things that I understood we were going to talk about was the fundraising, the funding. So I'm going to share our methodology, the RPC methodology. It's really simple. It's really basic. But and obviously here we're talking about trying to look for gifts that are $25,000 or more. And so you want to prioritize. In this case, for us, obviously we want to start with environment, then biodiversity. Forest protection would be the third element. And I'll talk about what we use. We generally use iWave, and I'll show in a little bit about that application, and also Candid. And these are applications that you can pay on a monthly basis, and they let you put in the categories that you want to fundraise. And you can have like a business development, or I don't know, small business. I've seen that it's a small business, but you want to define what methodology you're going to use. And then you want to search, you want to define what's the minimum amount. And then for me, in my experience, is that you want to search at least a 5-year period. And that tells you how this donor behaved in a 5-year period. And so then you know what the likelihood is of getting funds from them. And so, we went biodiversity, environmental education, sports and recreation, community, parks, arts and cultural awareness, that kind of thing. So as you can see, if you put these, should we say, parameters into iWave, you get like over 1 million results for 25,000. And then if you have the categories, you take it down to 46,000. And then you can add in that section the geography. Of course, in our case, because we have done some studies, we know that the Bay Area is probably where most of the donors come from, and so we say the Bay Area, and we send the East Coast, maybe New York City, that kind of thing, with the categories above, and now we have 7,625. And then you want to identify like comparable organizations. In our case, it's of course Save the Redwoods League, the Nature Conservancy, Sempervirens Fund, and all that stuff. And you list them right there. So what this does then, you put all this information into iWave, and what it does, it gives you a lot of names, and then you gotta run through them to select which ones actually apply to your organization. Something's going on with my computer. Are you seeing my screen? Yeah, so then, here we have.
Well, I'm
We're
looking
seeing
at
it.
your spreadsheet right now.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
seeing it, but it's not very large. So I don't know if there's, if you could zoom in, it might help folks see it a little more, but maybe that's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so here, for example, once you review the list that iWave and Candid gives you, then you have the last name, the address, you gotta have the address. And of course, you gotta cross-reference iWave and then the 990s and then maybe some organizations' websites, because it'll say AK to the web. So it's a little bit work intensive, but at the end, you have this spreadsheet where you have the address, the phone number, the email, if you want to email them, if you want to do a campaign. And then donors, for example, this one, donors to the National Forest Foundation. And then what's the capacity range? The capacity range is what's their giving capacity in a 5-year period. This is how it's done in the industry. You always look at 5 years. And then you have here, for example, this person gave to the National Forest Foundation, the Monterey Bay Aquarium, the Desert Botanical Gardens. Then you go in here, and then they have, other where there's more information. And with this information, of course, then you can, work with your board, work with your partners, and try to decide how much you're going to ask, and what would be the best person to ask. For example, this person has given 21,000 to the Stewards of the Coast and Redwoods. And it you have a little bit of information there. Marcy was the division business manager to energy technologies area at Berkeley until 1999. So you have some information that helps you do the approach, the strategy of approaching each one of the donors. In our case, we only did a list this year of 50 people. The yellow ones are the ones that are, that I'm pretty sure that we're gonna be able to, fundraise with them. And they obviously says donors to Save the Redwoods League, Truckee Donor Land Trust, and environmental volunteers. And here you have, how much they've donated to each one of those and that kind of thing. So
And,
once
So what is this system that you're working with?
Well, this spreadsheet itself, it's something I did. It's what I
Yeah.
use, what I did. But
Yeah.
obviously, I mentioned is what gives you this information is the methodology that I presented at the beginning,
Mhm.
and inputting those areas into iWave, and then it gives you a set of information, a set of names, and of course you got to review all that, and then you got to cross it to other, to other nonprofits where they have given money and maybe their name is there.
So
And then,
iWay is the donor database, is that it? Because that's maybe the part that I missed.
yeah, that's one of the databases that you use. So that would be like the starting point, iWave.
Okay.
But you also want to look for the 990s. The 990s is public information. So all the nonprofits got to list who their donors are in the 990s, especially if they're $5,000 or more. So with the 990s, you can get, you know, phone numbers, emails, addresses, that kind of thing.
Thank you.
So, yeah. So we use this list. Oh, too far. To be able to do the strategy with our board on how we're going to approach him, and we select one of these potential donors, and we pair them up with our board members, and then their work is to be able to figure out to do work to be able to get in touch with the potential donor. Once they get in touch, we make the ask. I don't know if that's answering any questions, but anyway, I wanted to share this. We do every quarter, we do 50 names, should we say, and that's where we work on. Um, if we didn't finish the first quarter, all of the names, that's where we carry to the next one, and then we maybe supplement. In this case, we got 52, 53 names. And so, as you can see, they all got really fast. They all got, like, they give to the Save the Redwoods League, and then information. Arlen grew up in San Francisco and moved to Marin in 2004. She served, and you can get a lot of this information from the 990s because you look at the 990s and it changes the address, so you can infer. But also you can get information from the LinkedIn. I don't know. This one right here, they give to the Yosemite Foundation, Yosemite Conservancy. Sometimes, like this one, I found their quote in the internet. You put in their name, and then it comes out because of the amount that they gave. Then they're published. Let's see here. They gave to the California State Parks Foundation, to the San Mateo County Parks and Recreation, the Conservancy, the Yosemite Conservancy, Pacific Forest Trust, North Coast Regional Land Trust. Does anybody know that organization? So this person gave them $1,000 in 2017. And generally speaking, they should give like continuous years. Like if you can see here, the Pacific Forest Trust has done a really good follow-up. They gave in 23, 22, 2017, 2004, 2016. But something happened that the North Coast Regional Land Trust got funds, got a donation of 1,000, but only in 2017. And they didn't get another donation. So that tells me that the follow-up program was probably not strong enough.
Mm.
Yeah.
So how much time, like, is this a large portion of your time in running the Parks Conservancy, or do you have a
I'm the
team or
executive
something?
director, so I'm full-time. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
On the fundraising.
Well, that's a big portion of my time. Yeah, the fundraising part. This specific thing, it's labor intensive, but it's not going to take you more than, I don't know, 3 days, 4 days
Right.
to do this spreadsheet. Um,
It's
so anyway,
got, you've got great information in there. Is there a subscription fee for iWave?
there
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
there is, and you can do it on a monthly, also Candid on a monthly basis. So yeah, but let me show you. So for example, uh,
You thought this would be boring. It is not boring.
I just wasn't sure if it was going to be
This is
useful.
like nugget,
This is
pick and
gold. You're
shovel
right.
work.
It's like a
Yeah,
gold
yeah,
nugget. Yes.
yeah, yeah.
I'm putting that nugget in my pocket right now.
Nice.
So I just wanted to put Tina's question in the chat here. What portion of the funding in Redwood Conservancy is private donor driven versus other funding sources?
I'm not sure I quite understand the question, but we don't have any government funds. If that was the so, I mean, we don't. I mean, federally funding. It's we have maybe one grant, and it's like I think we're closing it. It was $30,000. We have maybe one grant that is from the state, from the Coastal Conservancy, that is maybe $60,000. It's just that government funding is, if you think my chart, my spreadsheet was labor intensive, working
Right.
for government funding, it is so labor intensive. You got to
It's
do
Right.
awful.
reports, you got to do photographs, you got to do invoices, you got to, oh my God. And so then all of your time, you spend so much time in
Yeah.
fundraise in preparing those reports, where if you fundraise with individuals, you just got to do your annual report. That's it.
Uh-huh.
And you send them, of course, you got to send them your you got to send them a thank you letter, a tax exempt receipt. But that, other than that, that's it. And of course, we do have other activities. We have hikes, we have tours, we invite them. We have the run in the redwoods. We have all these other things where we invite all of our donors, but they know that we are working to support the parks. So I would say like 98% of our funding is private funding. We don't have government funding. It's just that with the government, it's easier, but it's so labor intensive. This
Well,
is
Yeah.
this is a good maybe for a note for our work group here is a whole session on nonprofit. We haven't really touched on that, and I know there are quite a few in the region, and it's probably a good topic for us to cover. So I'm going to make a note of that. But I mean, this is like, you know, how you make it, it's not market driven, it's private donor driven. And so the whole focus on aligning your organizational mission to something that resonates with the donors, that's part of the magic, I guess. But yeah, I think this would be a great topic for more. So thanks for bringing it up here. And Kelly's got another question in the chat there. Colby, you want to take that one?
Yeah, Kelly asks, what type of ask do you approach donors with? Do you customize per donor or per quarter, need, or organization?
Well, it's per donor. From the list that I showed you, of course, is per donor. And I should say from the spreadsheet. But of course, that's not the only way that we fundraise. We do grants, but we do private foundation grants. And I have a spreadsheet also for that. And then we do private foundation grants because you got to submit the proposal, and usually it's a very shortened proposal. And then, and it's one report at the end of the grant. And so that's the end of it. And of course, you know, we have different fundraisers. Well, like we just finished, you know, a Ranger cookie fundraiser. So we have different activities. This is iWave, the web page for the iWave. It is a little bit of expensive. It's about $3,000. It's not cheap, but it gives you really valuable information. And they have an arts and culture section. And so what this will give you is that it'll give you all the donors, and we're here talking about individuals, right? iWave does not work with companies. So the individuals who are interested in arts and culture and in funding arts and culture, you know, projects. And I saw your hand, you had a question.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to underscore what you're saying. The most effective arts and parks projects within the program that we've done have been the ones with strong co-ops. And many, many parks, state and local, have foundations. They have they on the state level they call them co-ops that they work with because they can do things. And even state parks has its own co-op in
Yeah.
Parks California.
Yes.
And it's private. It's not even, it's a little bit less than quasi-governmental, but they were created legislatively. But
Right.
they're created to help do things that it's hard for a government agency to do, like give out grants. So, and the hoops are not so huge or many as applying for a government grant are, or let's say paying artists. I mean, I knew this, which is one of the reasons I was brought on board, that to be an artist for any project in the government agency, it's almost like theater of the absurd. Well, are you on the state approved contractors list? Do you have $1 million, you know, insurance, blah, blah, blah. And so the reason the projects with strong co-ops were the most successful is we could just like port those contracts right over to the co-op and
Yeah.
and enable the co-op to be a pass-through in a sense of state funding over to them.
So the co-op is a formal agreement between the nonprofit and the agency?
So we have
Between
a
the
formal
park.
agreement with the park. So we have a formal, an MOU with California State Parks North Coast Region and the
Uh-huh.
Redwood National Park.
Okay. And so you're their go-to nonprofit organization for stuff related to their interests.
Right. So for example, in our case, you're seeing one of my so they have, for example, the condor restoration. So then I look for different funding opportunities. And obviously I got these ones mainly from Candid. And Candid is also a website that you can, it's about they have different levels. I recommend you get the level that's a little bit over $200 because it just gives you a lot more information, a lot more access. So I just keep track of what we're submitting. Here we have the Bolger Foundation, and I keep track by area. In this case, here's the artist in residence. We submitted for the Wilhelm Family Foundation. Here we have Howland Hill, interpretive staff, exhibits, indigenous affairs, that kind of thing. And then I have it by month also. How much we're gonna, once we go to by month, then I know, I put in here how much we're gonna ask for each one of them. Okay. And then if there's a special project, let's say the park's asking me for a special project, in this case it's Howland Hill, then I create a separate tracking sheet which are different foundations. So, are you looking at the one with red and blue and green?
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is like for the Howland Hill. So the green is what has been approved. And as you can see, you submit a lot with grants. It's a $1 to $6. So we need about $400,000. So we need to submit for about $2.5 million.
Mm.
And they're smaller amounts, but we got this one. We got 25,000 here. We got $100,000 here. So we got 125. But we know, like when each one is going to come. So we have the Dubs Foundation, Hydro Flask, Just Futures, Robert Glenn Rapp Foundation, Pacific Power, Doyle. And obviously it takes a little bit of time to build these tables, but once you build it, then next year it's going to be a lot easier because now you have filled and now you're going to be able to just select a little bit better. So here we have, the different foundations. And then of course we have events. And I think I'm just going to show you really quickly and then I'll stop. Oh, let me see because that's really small. So for example, we have the Earth Day campaign. So the Earth Day campaign, you can fundraise this way, but then let's say we have a collective, I don't know, in Humboldt, and we want to fundraise in a certain area. So you can buy lists of people. So we bought 5,000 names. In this case, we bought 5,000 names from Humboldt. And there are people who are interested in the environment, people who are interested in the parks, and who have the capacity to make a donation of $100 or more. And we sent them a mail, a physical paper, a mailer. Did any of you get the mailer? I know that some of you are in Humboldt. Yeah, Calder is moving his head. And you didn't get. So then we send it out, but in addition, that's to $5,000, 5,000 people. In addition, the company that sold us the addresses, they sell us the emails. They give us the email. So now we can do an email campaign and also a direct mail campaign. And of course, all of these things, they work much better if you put them together. If you work them together, right? You have some individual donors, major donors, then you got the campaigns, then you got the Ranger cookie with the local businesses, and then you got direct mail, those kind of things. I think that was what I had to share, and then I'm open to any questions that might be.
Thank you very much, Sal. No, I mean, I think we also think that was really, really some very incredibly useful nuts and bolts. No, because I mean, like, these are the challenges. I mean, we have so many nonprofits in this region. I mean, we have a saturation of nonprofits, and fundraising is, I mean, well, exactly as you said. I mean, like, you talked about like, these systems. I mean, they take a while to set up, but if you have the right tools and you set up your spreadsheets, I mean, it's an incredible force multiplier because for so many folks, particularly with these smaller nonprofits, I know, like, having come from one, right? It's sort of like, okay, you need to do all of the regular stuff, you know, just to keep the nonprofit running. And then on top of that, you also have to be the grant writer and, like, and the head fundraiser and everything as well for the organization. So I think that, I mean, honestly, I mean, being able to share these kinds of tools as well as skill sets out with the larger nonprofit community is incredibly useful and would help a lot of people for sure. I mean, honestly, I mean, it's helped me right now. So,
I mean, that's why I think it's probably a worthy topic for this group, I'm just wondering if, through the research, I know Amanda, I pinged you with a little question there. Maybe you could talk a little bit about where you are with that, but like, is there a Redwood Regional kind of uh, center or hub for nonprofit, nonprofits? Or, I mean, because it seems like if there's so many, having, coordination and capacity building would be a contributor to the economic well-being of the region, because you do bring in money, it does put people to work, and all of that.
Yeah, Josh, I appreciate the question, and it's something that does come up through our efforts periodically. Back when we were in the research phase of all this, we tried to just simply actually get like a list of how many nonprofits there were across our 4 counties and couldn't find a comprehensive source, which blew my mind. I figure it's a tax designation, surely someone has the number somewhere. And I'll just say the things that were mentioned to us the most often when we were out doing our listening campaign. Of course, there's NORCAN, and Humboldt Area Foundation used to do a lot of that type of stuff for the Humboldt area, and Del Norte as well through that bridge with Wild Rivers Community Foundation. And then it didn't seem to be quite as unified in the southern half, though I do want to highlight that the West Business Center is also, I'm going to get the designation wrong, Calder, correct me if you remember how Marianne articulated this, but they're not just an SBDC. They have a second designation that allows them to also extend their services to nonprofits, whereas our SBDCs can only serve businesses. So they do some of that work down there. We had a great, what was it? Oh gosh, Lee, remind me of what it was called, but HAF used to run a great grant writing training for nonprofits and other things.
All that's through NORCAN now. NORCAN took all
that's through NORCAN.
responsibilities. Yeah, that all moved to NORCAN.
Great. So I think it's in bits and bobs all over the place. And one of our goals here is we'd love to kind of give folks a more cohesive sense of what's out there and how they access it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see Kelly had a link she put in there to the Mendocino Area Foundation. Kelly, you have your hand up. Do you want to speak to that or something else?
Yeah, what you guys are talking about is exactly what people in Mendocino County have identified. We have, you might be familiar with Leadership Mendocino, which develops leaders in Mendocino County, but we also need a lot of help around nonprofits. So the Community Foundation developed the Leadership Institute, which is specifically geared towards the needs of nonprofits and helping them connect and thrive. And that has been ongoing. And they have a whole series of, what do people in nonprofits need to be successful? And they do talk about, fundraising in that. So there is a lot of knowledge at the Community Foundation. So if you're looking for ideas or how to put together something like this, you could reach out to them.
Right. Yeah, I think we'll put it on our list of topics for this group. But thank you, Sal. That was excellent.
Good. Glad to share.
And Calder for organizing, and your presentation also was quite informative and useful. So are there any other questions or comments that people want to bring up before we bring it to a finish line here? Seeing none.
Her hand up. I'm not sure if that was from before.
Carly's coming on. Okay. Are you raising your hand, Carly?
Sorry, I was just saying, I think Kelly Hansen still, oh no, she took her hand down. I'm sorry. I think she was just speaking. Pardon me.
That's all right. That's all right. Yeah, she spoke. All right. Well, I think we've met the moment here and shared a lot of good information. We will put this session up on our web page for all these sessions. And then in 2 weeks, we'll be back for a conversation coordinated by our Blue Economy and Working Lands sector table lead, Marianne Petrillo, who I know is also down at the CalEd conference today. So Okay, thank you all for coming, for turning up, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks, I hope. Thank you.